Thank you for tuning in to the Practical Preservation Podcast. Please take a moment to visit our website, practicalpreservationservices.com, for additional information and tips to help you restore your historical home. If you've not done so, please subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, and also like us on Facebook. Welcome to the Practical Preservation Podcast, hosted by Danielle and Jonathan Kepperling. Kepperling Preservation Services is a family-owned business based in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, dedicated to the preservation of our built architectural history for today's use as well as future generations. Our weekly podcast provides you with expert advice specific to the unique needs of renovating a historic home, educating by sharing our From the Trenches preservation knowledge and our guests' expertise, balancing modern needs while maintaining the historical significance, character, and beauty of your period home.
Today on the Practical Preservation Podcast, I have Josh Blanc with me from Clay Squared. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
Okay, so tell me about your background.
My background, starting with probably college, I worked in ceramics and went to school for ceramics and glass blowing. And then we moved from Columbus, Ohio to Minneapolis, and I got a job at running a tile shop there called North Prairie Tile Works. And at that point, in that 1 year that I was there, we did a project for the state capital of Minnesota where we restored an entire ceiling, a historic ceiling. And anything and everything could go wrong, went wrong with that project. And that's where I learned how to make things go right. And so as the story goes, it was 1,800 square feet of 6-inch by 12-inch tiles. And we told them we'd do it in 45 days. And we did. We just didn't count the extra 45 days it would take us to figure out how to make it right. So lots of challenges with that.
Yeah.
That was everything from that project on, I can look back when I have run into a problem and solve problems about making the tile from there.
Yeah. Were the problems like was the ceiling curved, or was that like some of the issue?
It's a Gustavino tile installation. So those are very well known throughout the subway systems in New York City. There's a lot of them all over the country, any state houses, a lot of these tiles. They're grooved tiles. They would shred when they come out of the extruder. They were warping. They had the glazes. They painted all of the tiles on the first floor of the Minnesota State Capitol. So they didn't show any variation. And so they only give me one tile and they said, can you make 3,600 more? And so lots of little battles of that color's not correct. And, why is this going on? So just learning process.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Those you do, like in the middle of it, you're really not enjoying it and you're questioning your life choices, but afterwards and going forward, it always makes a better job than later on.
Right. Yeah, it was definitely, and I was probably 23, 24. I had hired a friend of mine that I worked at the Walker Arts Center as a guard, and then he was 21, and then I had another 18-year-old. So here we are doing historic restoration with a bunch of 20-year-olds or barely 20-year-old people.
Right.
But there wasn't any history. That was a big challenge with this, is that 100 years ago we would just been workers in a factory, but at that time, I was scourging around trying to find other people to help me, and we didn't have, it wasn't readily accessible, to say it that way. And I found a tile maker in Omaha, Tim, I'm missing his last name, but he was a tile maker. He gave me some hints, and then literally we were at a brunch with my wife's cousin, and he worked for the Cremette factory. And I was telling him about the project. He says, making tiles and making noodles are basically the same things, it sounds like. So why don't you come down and we'll give you a tour. And he showed me how they dealt with dealing with extruders. And literally his couple last little things really helped us figure out that last part. And so, there's a lot of tie-ins between different genres of creating and making things. So tile making is one of those things, a lot like cooking.
So what drew you into to reproduction tile?
Well, I mean, obviously, you get it when you get a project like that,
Right.
and that really, I think more for me, it was I realized that I'm a problem-solving person. I like that process, and so that was much more interesting to me. And there's a lot of problem solving that goes with just tile making in general, and then of course any remodeling and trying to figure out something from 100 years ago and trying to understand what kind of materials they use, how do they, what was their aesthetic, what is it that they are trying to achieve, and how can you make something that without grandma's recipe of how that they do it, how does that work?
Right.
And so I've come up with my own process to be able to help people the most and save them money and need time and challenges by finding other tile companies that already either were original companies or are made reproductions that are perfect now that I don't need to go in and try to make everything.
Right.
If it already exists, you should utilize it and keep them in business and not compete against somebody for what reason.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, because there's plenty of other things that aren't being made that you can make to complement. Yeah,
for sure.
So tell me about Clay Squared. What is the history? What products or services do you offer?
So yeah, we just passed our 25th year last week. So I make handmade tiles and for kitchens, bathrooms, fireplaces, public art, historic restoration, and then we also carry a large selection of historic tile companies that match those tiles from the 1890s to the 1950s is our main focus that we work on. And then my wife, which you can see the work behind me, is what she does, and she works in polymer clay. And so we've just sort of moved around over the years from smaller studios to keep going larger and larger until we got to this new studio, so we can produce and improve on our techniques and take on different projects.
Yes. Do you go out and install still, or are you just making tile now?
No, I never install. That's a whole other craft. That's a whole other skill set, and that's a whole other business. And so for me, finding people that are already really good at this, and we're really lucky. We have many top tile setters in the country that are right here in Minneapolis and St. Paul area. So we can really, go to them. Jan Hahn is one of our go-to people a lot of times, and so it's great to have quality people to help you make you look better.
So tell me about reproduction or historic reproduction tile. I know there's different styles and different architectural errors.
Maybe. So anything from the 1890s to the 1920s and 30s, there was a lot of tiles that were what we call flat edge series tiles. So they're very rectified. They're taken from European. Everything was about Europe. They weren't trying to be American at that point. So They wanted things to look like stone. They wanted things to look like Europe. And so most of the East Coast was built that way. And so when we do the restoration now, trying to find that. So we work with Heritage Tile, and they have a whole series of unglazed porcelain tiles as well as wall tiles that match many of the colors. And they have mainly the flat edge rectified tiles. And then as we move closer to the 20s, there's overlap. And then we start dealing with just slightly beveled tiles. The tiles get thinner. The tiles from earlier are 3/8 inch thick. Now they start moving to 1/4 inch thick. They have all the same profiles. The whites are almost identical, but then they start introducing more deco colors, more pinks, greens, and yellows start to become the thing as you move into the 30s, 40s. And so we work with B&W Tile, and so they're an original manufacturer from the period, and so they have the original recipes, which is great. But they're always changing. Everything's always constantly changing with what was, but trying to get it back to those colors. And then
that color matching.
Yeah, well, when you have the recipes and you have the product and you have most of it there, it's so much easier. And and you produce a lot, what you can deal with the variations. But starting from scratch, it's a big process. I mean, that's what Heritage Tile did, and they developed a whole line based on that. And some they can't get, and some they can. So, but we do a lot of restoration for that with what they offer. And there's not that many companies out there that do this. I mean, this is what you could buy at Sears. And we have the Sears, catalog book, and this is the tiles people could get. So that's why it was so proliferated all over the United States, in all the big cities. And now there's one company making this.
Yeah.
So,
I do think that people don't realize that, even at that point, so much was being mass produced that, it seems very specialized now, but at the time it was, just like going to Sears.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then people come and like, oh, I just need a couple tiles. Can you just get that to me in this color? I'm like, this isn't a paint store, and there is only one company, and like there were many manufacturers at that time, and so there are shades of difference, just like cars. They come out with a car shade and then they change it, 3-4 years later, and these guys are sort of the same sort of deal. Like they all had to make their own distinct pink or their own distinct, greens, and to stand out from each other, but they're very similar.
Yeah, very good. I saw on your website that you have tips for planning a tile project. Can you share some of those with me?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just measuring and knowing what your space is, and most people don't realize all those places you have to measure. Like we look at our kitchens every day, we look at our fireplaces and bathrooms, but when you really get in there and you have to, like a fireplace, you have to get both of the legs, you have to get the top part, just every detail. You have to think about, are there any open edges where we need to have a glazed edge or a bullnose to finish something? For kitchens, I tell a lot of people, it's like, how do you live in your space? Do you have a lot of toaster ovens, coffee makers? Where, if you're going to put accents or anything in there, don't cover it up with your toaster oven.
Right.
Spend money on something you're never going to see. And we all just don't think about our spaces after a while, and we our normal sort of pathways. So it's important for them to take that time when they come to work with us to know what they're getting involved in. We always recommend, if they can draw it out on a piece of sketch paper, or, not everybody has an architect or designer. Right. Even if you do, I think it's very, it makes you feel more part of the process if you at least do some sketches and feel like, okay, I'm in ownership of this. I'm going to get these tiles in 6 or 10 weeks or whatever. And what was I thinking? And if I have a sketch, I can go, oh yeah, there's the notes. This is all put together. They're just in a bunch of boxes. How do I deal with this?
Right.
And so we try to help people in that process, but it is a lot of just making, getting you, it's not like going to the grocery store every week. You know what bananas are when they're ripe. You have to take the time to understand what you're getting involved in. But I would say most people who come to us love their houses, so therefore they want to learn more. But we're also Americans, and we want everything instantaneously, and we want somebody else to do it for us. That is the challenge with this part of the world. It's like, this is old world thinking and how it was done. It takes time, and it takes a lot of little details.
Yes. Yeah. Details are usually, I think, what make or break a project. And then the details really do matter.
Yep.
So, where can your tiles be purchased, or how could someone order them from you?
Well, we definitely, our online presence is very strong. So we've been doing that since the beginning. We have a showroom, so local people and people drive all over the place. We've had people that are traveling from all over the country, like, we're in Minneapolis, we'll stop in. I'm like, wow, you're from Florida, you're from North Carolina, you're from California. Like, it happens more often than you'd think.
Right.
I had somebody from Green Bay this past week just coming in, so he wanted to come see us. But we get some people in the showroom, but it is all online. Everybody knows everything about me before they get here. They know all the stuff that's going on. They see the studio, so they think it's fun, and it's enjoyable. And we have our studio, and I can show that to you. We can walk around and I can see it, but like we make it so that people can see that we're actually making it. So that's a big component of how my process works. That we don't get returns because of that. Because if you order things on Amazon and the color's not quite right, they just ship it back because they're not real people, and you sort of distance that. But when you know that you're talking to somebody who made something for you, you're more likely to be more lenient on your criticisms and unwilling to work through the process of the challenges.
Right. And trust the process.
Well, at least know that there's a real human on the other side, and that makes a big difference. That we're not as most of us, we have our computers and we don't get to make things and we don't get to see how it's made. We don't understand how things are made anymore. I grew up in Vermont, and lots of, cutting wood and moving, hay and moving, with animals. So like there was always a physical component of my life. And I think when you live in the city, sometimes you don't get that same experience. And so you don't know where do eggs come from? Where does, food show up from? So that it helps to have that component.
Yeah, I agree. I read an article maybe a year or two ago that a child was shocked that there were bones in their chicken. I'm like, well, if you've only ever eaten chicken nuggets, you're not real in touch with your food.
That's right. Yeah, I had a friend when I was young, his wife, they'd asked her, like, where did you get eggs? She's like, from the store. And it's like, that, not from chickens. So, but and so when people find older homes, they learn a lot about the house, and it is learning to listen to the house and learning about what it took to somebody made. All older houses were handmade.
Right.
They were not prefab. They were not, everything was put together one by one, and that's the way it's been for thousands of years. And so only in the last 50 years have we really moved to this idea of like pre-manufacture, plop it in there and just throw it away when you're all done. And these houses are not made that way. These buildings are made to be restored. And that is not in our ethos of what our country is about currently. So maybe one day we'll get there, but it's hard. It's a competing thing.
It is. I agree with you. That kind of leads me into my next question of trends and challenges in preservation.
Sure.
Yeah. So what do you see as either trends or challenges from your vantage point?
Well, I'll start with the challenges that because there's so few tile companies out there, one of them just had a fire recently. Two of them had fires in the last, year or two. So like when you don't have it anymore, what do you do? And then there's always a shutdown and there's a startup again. And then that drives costs up because they have to rebuild everything. And when there's so few people that are making these pieces and parts, you saw it in Paris when Notre Dame, burned down. Like, well, where do you find all these craftspeople to build something that was made, 800 years ago? Like that cycle of making these craftspeople make things has disappeared, and we want to make everything automated. So that's the big challenge, is making sure there's more people who want to learn this and can learn the trades, whether it's tile setting or tile making, glaze, theory. There's a lot of art students that go through ceramics and they don't go into the industry. They go into making one-off pieces, so they're not involved. So that some of that could be, people like doing this. It's all the same stuff, except that there's a specific product. And I went to art school. I totally get it. I was never thinking of making tiles. It wasn't on my mind, but like I realized that I like the process. Trends, definitely, when I first started, arts and crafts, bungalows, and that was the all thing that was going in. There were lots of books being printed. Tile making itself had a resurgence. The Tile Heritage Foundation was doing symposiums. I put together the Handmade Tile Association. That lasted for 17 years. We had tile festivals. And so we built a lot of awareness, and people were getting into it. And now it's changed to mid-century is really much more like those houses that people are moving into. Pink, green, and yellow tiles are like, it's a love it or loathe it sort of scenario. And what I tell people is like, look, those pink, green, and yellow tiles is literally the only contribution to the world of tile the America's ever made, because everything else is from somewhere else. Even the arts and crafts with, Batchelder, we carry some of their work. He was still working with the whole arts and crafts scene that came from England and working there. And so there was a whole movement, but the pink, green, and yellow, nobody else is making that. And nobody else has made that, really. I mean, there's bright colors. So you're getting rid of your own heritage every time you rip it out. And I would say that if you live with it for a little bit longer, it might speak to you. But a lot of people just gut these things and they're super well built.
Right.
So it's like a tank you're taking apart. And so it's expensive. And then they put something in that literally isn't installed as well, doesn't have as much range, doesn't fit the house because it's like all modern. Their house is old. So like those are the challenges with it.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. And I don't watch daytime TV very often because I'm not usually, I'm working, but
Right.
the bath fitter commercials drive me crazy.
Right. The HGTV things. Yeah.
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 Just cover up what's there. Don't
Right.
fix it. Don't worry about it.
Right. Yeah. It's a major disservice to the process of like, it's all for entertainment and it's not really about understanding what you have in it.
Right. Yeah.
And maybe when you're young, you're just like, I want to make it my own. I want to try to do that. But that's a real challenge because people buy houses for location and price.
Yeah.
And so if that fits in their neighborhood and they get a pink house, pink bathroom, they might like, that's not what I was expecting. This is all I can afford. I'll rip it out.
Right.
Like,
Well, and I think it slowed down some, but for a while people were really not staying in their house for very long. So you're doing all of these modifications and then not living in the house. That's even worse to me.
Yeah, well, there's definitely, so you're trying to sell it, then everybody puts in, listen to the real estate agent.
Yeah.
It's not the real estate agents are incorrect that you want to make certain things, clean and sharp. But we're like, for us, the person who buys your house is looking for a house. If they like historic houses, and if you make them historic, it's worth more money.
Right.
And if you take something and you distort it, make it clean and nice in a different way, but not accurate, and then it's just about money. Right. And so like, but are you really getting your value or not? That's a big question. So it's a challenge.
It is.
But
yeah. So is there anything that you thought about that you wanted to share before we kind of wrap up that maybe I didn't ask you or you thought about while we were talking?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something to think about is there are some really good resources out there. The Tile Heritage Foundation, the National Tile Contractors Association, and the Tile Council of North America are all working on, making people be able to utilize tile well. We were just having this conversation at a board meeting with the Tile Heritage Foundation that, tile is shown in movies and TV shows all the time. 30 Rock. Every time they put that on there, that's all tile that you're seeing the Rockefeller Center, constantly. We did a project for the Planet of the Apes, the redo years ago. I mean, it was only there for a blip, but they used these and it shows genres and the tiles show the periods very well. And so it's a very important part of our society that we walk on these things all the time. We, see them all around, but we don't notice it because it's quiet in general. But there are, we estimated somewhere around 1,000 tile makers, 20 years ago that are literally making tiles throughout the country. I don't know what that number is now, but there's a lot of interesting things locally you can get that would tie into your house around you, or when governments are trying to restore their the buildings at the state capitals and other things. They do exist. Those companies still exist and they can be utilized, and it's important. It makes, every time you get rid of these things, it hides our history of how we built things. And do you want that for yourself? Like the work you're doing right now, whatever you are, you're a dentist or whether you're a food worker or whatever it is, you want that to pass on. And if you're just ripping out somebody else's work, you're really not honoring that system. So I think that's the whole point of any historic restoration, whatever product you're making in that process.
Yeah, trying to retain as much of the historic fabric as possible. Yeah,
we learn something from it. I mean, we learn something from ripping it all down and starting over again, but it's usually makes a lot of people angry, and it doesn't make a lot of people, it's not fascinating. I just got back from Portugal, and they've been keeping their history for 800 years of trying to do this, and it's beautiful and it's amazing, and there's always something to restore, but it's who they are. There's not as much waste. There's a lot of like storytelling that goes with that. And it brings people together in a different way. So
no, I agree with you. Is there anything that you would like to promote to our listeners?
I would just say, go look around yourself to your local tile companies and see if you can get something from somebody before you start going to the big box stores. Those big box stores don't make things for houses that are older.
Right.
If you're preserving, whether you own a bungalow, a Victorian, a mid-century, you will not find the products you want in a big box store.
Yeah.
And places like what we do are trying to help you. And if we're good at sharing, so if you find somebody in New Orleans, there's people down there that make the tiles that were made at that time because they love their city too.
Right.
And so you have to spend a little extra time. And it's not about coming to me so much. It works if I'm the person that can make what you're looking for, great. And if not, I'm going to help you find somebody who can if I have the option. So
yeah,
me,
I agree with that too. If somebody reaches out and I can't help, I try to connect them to people who can, because that's just it works. And then I get surprised. Sometimes I'll get a call and somebody will say, oh, this person referred you. And I'm like, I don't even know who that is, but
right.
It's the connections.
Right.
So how can our listeners get in contact with you?
So you can go to claysquared.com and you can see our website there. We have an Instagram at claysquared and Facebook. We're on house.com. We're on Pinterest. So lots of ways to engage with us. You can call us up on our phone numbers on our website, 612-781-6409. And you can email us, josh@claysquared.com. And we'll help you out. We'll send you catalogs and planning guides, and then we have a whole sample program here to get you the things you need to see in real life, because that's part of this process. Is you can see it online, but that doesn't mean it's the right color. What it looks like in my studio looks like in your house. We have a sample program where people take out samples for 2 weeks for free if they're local, and if you're not, and it's like $14.95 to $19.95 depending on the product, that you get a little package of 5 samples of each of the colors. And show you a range to see what kind of variation to expect. Does it fit your house? All that sort of scenario. And it's just a lot of educational components. That's what I'm trying to give you. I'm not trying to sell you something. You will sell it to yourself. You either love it or you don't. I either am the right person or not. And goal is to just get people to keep their houses and not start over again, because that's not ecological for us. And so we work towards that much more, use what you can use over again as best as possible.
Yes, I definitely agree. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I enjoyed our conversation.
Yes, it was good to meet you.
Yeah, good to meet you. Thank you.
All right, have a great day.
You too.
Thanks for listening to the Practical Preservation Podcast. The resources discussed during this episode are on our website at practicalpreservationservices.com/podcast. If you received value from this episode and know someone else that will get value from it as well, please share it with them. Join us next week for another episode of the Practical Preservation Podcast. For more information on restoring your historic home, visit practicalpreservationservices.com.